Great. That is the readout. So happy. All in with Chris A. Starts right now.
Tonight on All In. Those are people that love this country, that truly respect law enforcement, and those who are tens of thousands of Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters, I might have been a little concerned. Tonight, new FBI arrests for the assault on Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, and new reporting from Katie Benner of the New York Times on the Capitol pipe bomber who is still at large. Then, as the president begins his American Rescue Tour, Adam Serwer on why Joe Biden chose prosperity over vengeance. Plus, David Wallace Wells on how so many wealthy Western countries got COVID so wrong. And is there any way in the world to convince vaccine-skeptic Trump supporters they should get their shots? All In starts right now. Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. We've got big developments on two of the biggest mysteries surrounding the January 6th insurrection. What happened to Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick that led to his death? And who planted pipe bombs next to the RNC and the DNC? There is still a ton that we do not know about that day, though today we learned a few more pieces. But before we get into that, a little context, because over the last 2 months, there has been a concerted effort on the right to spin a counter-narrative about this violent insurrection. You remember, you saw it happen live on TV, an attack that sought explicitly for really the first time in American history to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power from one administration to the next. That was the goal. There have been people with big audiences spreading the idea that these attackers were harmless, it was kind of a joke or a lark, that all the stuff you've been told about how dangerous and violent it was played up, and the media is telling you it's white supremacists. Show me white supremacists.
It was not an act of racism. It was not an insurrection. It wasn't an armed invasion by a brigade of dangerous white supremacists. It wasn't. Those are lies.
Well, you know, on the day of the insurrection, there was this guy walking through the Capitol building with a giant Confederate flag, and, well, there was also this guy with a t-shirt that said Camp Auschwitz Staff. Most people at the Capitol that day were not quite as explicit about their feelings, but an awful lot of them invaded the seat of American democracy, again, violently, under this banner chanting America First. Then Friday, the D.C. U.S. Attorney released these photos of Timothy Hale Cusinelli, an active sergeant in the Army Reserve, who they say, and I quote them here, recorded videos of himself screaming at and interfering with United States Capitol Police officers, climbing a scaffolding to enter the United States Capitol building through doors that had been kicked open by rioters, and chanting, "Stop the steal," with other protesters. This gentleman, who, according to interviews with his co-workers, was a well-known white supremacist. In fact, don't take my word for it, one Navy petty officer stated, Hale Cusinelli, and again I quote, talked constantly about Jewish people, and remembered defendants saying, Hitler should have finished the job. Hitler should have finished the job. Wait, yeah, where are the white supremacists? What are you talking about? This is who, at least some of these people were. And let's remember exactly what they did. Because as apologists for the violent mob know full well, a cop is dead after that attack. Well, 2 more died of suicide, in fact. The mob actually injured 140 police officers despite claiming to support police. They gouged an officer's eye out. They beat an officer with a flagpole. They struck another with a fire extinguisher. They crushed officers indoors. They threatened to shoot a cop with his own gun while they beat him. Today, 2 men were charged with assaulting multiple officers with what appeared to be some kind of bear repellent, and that includes assaulting Officer Brian Sicknick. According to the complaint, quote, officers Sicknick, Edwards, and Chapman suffered injuries as a result of being sprayed in the face with an unknown substance. All 3 officers were incapacitated and unable to perform their duties for at least 20 minutes or longer while they recovered from the spray. Officer Edwards reported lasting injuries underneath her eyes, including scabbing that remained on her face for weeks. Oh yeah, what violence? What are you talking about, violence, right? Officers Edwards and Chapman also described the spray to their faces as substance as strong as, if not stronger than any version of pepper spray they had been exposed to during their training as law enforcement officers. Officer Brian Sicknick lost his life a day after that encounter. despite all that, this idea that, well, really, were they that bad? They weren't violent, they weren't white supremacists, they were just patriots. That insidious, ridiculous, facially absurd notion is kind of canon for a lot of people. I mean, not just, people on TV. Republican Senator Ron Johnson came away from the attack with this remarkable takeaway.
I'm also criticized because I've made the comment that on January 6th I never felt threatened. Because I didn't. And mainly because I knew that even though those thousands of people that were marching to the Capitol were trying to pressure people like me to vote the way they wanted me to vote, I knew those are people that love this country, that truly respect law enforcement, would never do anything to break a law. And so I wasn't concerned. Now, had the tables been turned, and Joe, this could get me in trouble. Had the tables been turned and President Trump won the election, and those were tens of thousands of Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters, I might have been a little concerned.
This will get me in trouble. He knew what he was saying. Oh yeah, they would never break the law, except they all broke the law. And I didn't feel bad or scared. I mean, these guys, there goes the Auschwitz t-shirt guy.
Before I continue any further, that was Senator Ron Johnson, who said that he would have been more threatened had BLM, Black Lives Matter, and Antifa were protesting had Trump won. Chris Hayes, before I go any further, Chris Hayes would have turned into another racial incident. And I'm going to show you how this is not another racial incident. For those of you who have YouTube, who are able to view this on YouTube, I want to show y'all something real quick. And this is why I titled this video, "The Truth About BLM and Antifa." If you're also listening via Anchor or Spotify, that's what this podcast is about. For those of y'all who have YouTube, let me go ahead and show y'all this article. And I'm going to go ahead and read the section from an article written via the Epoch Times. It's called, the Epoch Times article is called "Opinion, A Mom's Research, Part 3. Who are the real racists?" And I'm going to read on this skipping through the rest of the article, I'm going to lead on this last part, which is very important, which is the title of this video. Okay? What's behind the Black Lives Matter movement and Antifa movements. This is very important because most people don't know what organization the Black Lives Matter movement it really is. Matter of fact, I just learned something new about Antifa. This article confirms what I have been suspicious about with Antifa. I'm already familiar with the Black Lives Matter movement and who they really are. But Antifa, I learned something new. I was like, okay, let me go ahead and read this last part for y'all, especially through those who are listening through Anchor or Spotify or any other podcasting channel this video may be recorded through. Here's the article. Black Lives Matter is a Marxist movement. Its founders have publicly stated that they are trained Marxists. They close every meeting and every action with a communist manifesto slogan. We have nothing to lose but our chains. End quote. They're financially sponsored by the Chinese Progressive Association of San Francisco. And they have that highlighted, that in bold blue letters there. So, so that we can read further as to who the Chinese Progressive Association is. And it's a storefront of the Chinese Communist Party on the West Coast. They followed the model of the Black Panther Party, a radical Marxist group in the 1960s. Their worship chairman Mao Zedong is his name. This is the first article that I've read that calls the Black Panther Party a radical Marxist group. And that also confirms to me as to how the Black Panther Party wasn't really all about liberation for black people from the get-go. It was actually created by the cabal to stir up more hatred between blacks and whites. Continuing on reading the article, they care nothing when black businesses are looted or when more and more black people are killed by criminals. They care only about taking advantage of tragedies like the death of George Floyd to incite hatred. And actually, let me add to that also, Black Lives Matter really started when the death of Trayvon Martin took place. A young black boy. He wasn't quite a man yet. He was only 17 years old. And I come to find out that Trayvon Martin's father is a Mason. Same goes for Mike Brown's father. He's a Mason as well. So everybody is like, all these groups and non-profit organizations who are supposed to be doing activist work, they actually profiting off of the deaths of not just George Floyd, but Mike Brown and Trayvon Martin as well, which is how the Black Lives Matter movement began. Continuing on in the article, the Antifa, which means anti-fascist movement, originated in Germany in the 1930s. It was started by members of the Communist Party of Germany and described itself as a Red United Front under the leadership of the only anti-fascist party, the KPD, which stands for the Communist Party of Germany. The contemporary Antifa movement is formed mainly by communists, socialists, and anarchists. The fascism it refers to actually means long-standing American traditions and values. Communist symbols are often seen in its protests. Its only interest is to burn all traditional values and social structures to ashes. This is interesting, though. And, you know, the long-standing American traditions and values is what upsets the so-called most marginalized of people, such as your LGBTQ people, and not just your self-avowed anarchists, socialists, communists, and the like. Yeah, that's why you have a lot of cancellations going on, such as Pepe Le Pew, such as Dr. Seuss. I mean, come on. Y'all already taking prayer out of schools. You know what I mean? And now y'all wanna destroy the American family by having 2 men and 2 women and a child as opposed to the natural order of things, which is man, woman, and child. You know what I'm saying? Man, woman, and child is bound to be replaced by man, transgender woman, and child. Alicia Garza, the guy that she's with, I believe he's a transgender man. Meaning I believe that he was born female, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Try to figure that out. And she's also related to George Soros. George Soros is the creation of these two movements. He's pretty much the financier or philanthropist of these two movements, BLM and Antifa. See, this is something that MSNBC host Chris Hayes and Joy Reid are not going to talk about. I can guarantee you that they know about this when I'm presenting to y'all, but they're not allowed to put that on their news program because their bosses will be infuriated. They don't want to upset their bosses. See, they're trying to get paid. You know what I'm saying? I'm spitting the truth, and I ain't trying to get paid. You know what I mean? I'm not getting paid for this. You know? It'd be nice if I was getting paid to spit the truth, but no, you don't really get paid that much for speaking the truth. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I am very leery of being associated or joining a protest with Black Lives Matter, because I know who they really are, and I want everybody else to know who they really are too, especially black people. Because just because you got black in the name doesn't mean that they're for black people. Just because you got colored in the name, such as the NAACP, that doesn't mean that they're for black people. And this is what black people need to understand. The sooner black people understand this, the sooner they'll be able to understand that they have been hoodwinked into thinking that these non-profit organizations with black or colored in the name are fighting for you. They're not. They're not even fighting for Caucasian people. They really out here to get paid by the elitist cabal. That's who pays them to do what they do, for them to do what they do. You know what I'm saying? See, I'm sure y'all heard the reports that the organization Black Lives Matter is not even paying all of their local BLM chapters. That's just because they keep throwing the money to themselves. See, their sponsors or their main sponsors are the Democratic Party. See, now, had Donald Trump would have won, yes, BLM and Antifa would have been out there protesting. You know what I mean? And Ron Johnson's right. I think Ron Johnson would have been threatened. I think any Republican politician would have been threatened. I think some of the Democratic politicians would have been threatened had BLM and Antifa would have marched. They probably would have done far more damage than what the Trump supporters did. But see, once you realize the game that is being played, it would make sense that, especially black people, would start saying, we can't have these organizations that got black in their name or got colored in their name or got maybe urban in their name to be going around here talking about they're for black people and don't really give a damn about heterosexual black men and women, or don't care about, if you destroy the American family, especially the black family, you don't really have a society left. You're really calling for the depopulation of the human race. That's what these movements are for. See, they're not going to tell you that, but that's what it all boils down to. And that's what I really want to emphasize in this video. I wish I would have recorded Joy Reid, because that would have really made some sense too. Because I'm sure she knows what BLM is really all about too. Unless she's just really clueless. Like Stacey Dash. But anyway, y'all be easy. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section. And I'll hit y'all up on the next video. Or the next podcast.